Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. In today's episode, we're chatting to a marriage celebrant about the Institute of Marriage and how it's changed over the ages. Some of the things we touch on are what marriage is all about today, what people are looking for now in a partner, and some of the traits of couples who are just about to tie the knot. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast, everyone. Today we've got Claudia Neal Shaw. She is an ex-criminal defense lawyer turned wedding celebrant. She's on a mission to redefine romance for millennial couples. She's got a background in communications and law, and Claudia believes the power of storytelling and ceremony is the key to celebrating love in a fun, modern, and meaningful way. In her spare time, you'll find her walking, swimming, and drinking coffee by the beach every single day. Welcome to the show, Claudia.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be with you this morning.
So Claudia, it was a bit of a shift, I guess, changing from a criminal defense lawyer across to being a celebrant. So how did that come about?
Really good question, and one I answer a lot. When I left school, there were two things that I wanted to be. I either wanted to be an actress or a lawyer, and I auditioned for performing arts schools, and I, put my application into law school, and I got into law school first, and I went, yep, great, this is what I want to do. And so I studied law alongside communication, so it was that nice kind of complementary skill set. And when I left uni and I did my practice in law, I just decided that it wasn't the life that I had envisioned in the end. It was long hours and stressful work. And I think that you really need to find joy in the things that you're doing every day. And wedding celebrancy ended up being something that I really enjoyed. I went to weddings a lot. I loved the idea of really hearing people's love stories and seeing how they felt on the day and then how their guests in turn felt as well. So it was quite a natural transition, even though it seems quite different.
Mm. Yeah. So you've got this beautiful focus on younger couples who are in that millennial, generation and the generations coming. Can you talk to us a little bit about why or how you got interested specifically in that?
I think, more often than not, we're using the experiences that we've had in our own lives to say, okay, what am I witnessing in the world every day and who am I interacting with? Mm-hmm. I am a millennial. I'm in my 20s, and I found that not only my own experience, but my friends around me, whether it was with dating or trying to find the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, it's pretty hard, actually. And it's all part of that, maturity and development as you're going through your teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, all through life, really. And I think that focus on the millennial version of marriage was so important because I noticed differences very quickly between what older generations really looked for in marriage and then also what younger people were wanting and what it actually meant to them. It wasn't necessarily something that they needed to do when they were really young, or that it was a tradition within their family that they needed to uphold. I find now marriage is a choice made by people based on just different circumstances.
Yeah, interesting. So Nathan and I recently read this book by Eli J. Finkel. It's called The All or Nothing Marriage. And he really digs really deep into this institution of marriage and what it's meant throughout the ages and the different reasons, why people chose to get married, the history of marriage, the sociology of marriage, and the economics of marriage. And he kind of draws this parallel between Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that, marriage way back, 1850s was about meeting your physiological needs, food, water, shelter, and then, it kind of moved up to safety. And then around the 1850s, it sort of flipped and started to become a little bit more about love, but there was still, very distinct roles, and that there was a breadwinner and a homemaker. So there might have been more love there, but it was still meeting those, more, foundational needs. And then kind of from the 1960s kind of onwards, we've started to evolve into wanting all of those bottom tiers of the pyramid, but then also esteem and self-actualization and growth from our partners. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you've observed and what you've noticed in the couples you speak with?
I really liked that explanation of how you kind of analysed where it has gone, and that couples now are really looking for that full circle of what are all of the values and qualities I not only want to share with a partner, but do I want to seek from my own life? And there's one phrase, and I'm sure that you both maybe said it to each other or heard it, and it's something I definitely hear. It's something I write in ceremonies, that most people are looking for another person who makes them the best version of themselves. And I'm finding now that that's becoming the umbrella for what does the best version of myself look like? Does it mean that I want to experience continued growth? Do I want to partner with someone who I'm going to feel like I wake up every day and we're moving towards a common goal together or a common dream that energizes us, and that we don't wake up and feel, oh, I guess another day, it's a bit the same. I feel a bit, stagnant. When I interview couples, I really want to understand where they've been together, what their history has been, how they felt about each other when they first met, where are they now? So how have they gotten to deciding to take the leap into marriage? And then also, where are they going? What does the future look like for them? And I think in a lot of different books, in research, in podcasts, people are exploring how people are trying to plan their future. And it's not necessarily revolving around, I want to buy a house, I want to have kids, we want to travel. It might involve those things, but more often than not, it's saying, what is our life going to look like in 10 years? How are we going to feel about each other? And I think that there is a beautiful opportunity, and I think in what you guys are doing with the podcast as well, in that education piece around encouraging people to think like that a little bit more, so that we can have better relationships and there's actually longevity in them, rather than I'm ticking off these milestones, getting married, I'm having a baby, I'm buying a house. We're doing all the things which are important, but I don't necessarily believe they're the sole reason for the longevity of relationships.
So it sounds like that people are now being much more conscious about actually choosing to get married rather than just doing it because it was a tick in a box, essentially. So what are some of the reasons that you're seeing why people are actually still choosing to get married if it's no longer a survival piece or something like that?
People ask me this a lot, and even people who have chosen to get married, they want to know who I've married before, the type of couples. And then I meet some people who say to me, gosh, being a wedding celebrant, it's a great job, but I'd never get married, which is also totally fine. And I'm always interested in trying to understand, what are people really seeking out from their romantic relationships? And for some people, it is enough to say, this is my person, we're committed to each other, and marriage isn't something that's a priority to us. For some people who do choose to get married, there is that element of tradition. But I think that what we're starting to categorize it as, particularly in a millennial setting, is that declaring your love for someone, not only in, a legal, but in a ceremonial format like marriage, it's really saying there is something higher than ourselves that we're committing to. And it is still seen as something that is a really serious step. Not only is it, are there legal implications behind it? Your legal status changes, but also you are creating this space, this intimate space, and inviting your closest and mostest people in and saying, this is forever. We're taking this leap. And there is something still every time I deliver a ceremony where I think, God, this is pretty special that I get to be involved in this. I don't think there are many jobs or roles where you have access to that level of intimacy very quickly with people.
There are various ways that you can look at getting married, right? You get up and you make this huge declaration of love and commitment to your partner, and you've got all your most, normally you've got all your most favorite friends and family surrounded there, and they're witnessing this, they're observing you make this big decision. And I guess one of the things that Eli sort of talked about in this all or nothing marriage is the idea that all of a sudden you've created almost an accountability. You've said something out loud and you're going to hold yourself to that commitment that you made, not just to that person, but all of the people there, to create that field or that force of accountability. And he kind of talks about this idea that, we are all desire, pleasure seeking humans. And if we've created a few, I guess, legal hurdles and, peer accountability hurdles, it makes us much more aware of our behavior in that relationship. For me, that was something I'd never really thought about before, that, you know, there is an element of peer accountability when you've gone ahead and had that big party, had that big wedding. You know, does that ever come up with couples?
It does. Look, it does. And I think that it really, again, comes down to, I think, the reasons why people do choose to get married and the priorities for them in developing their life together. I think there's something really interesting in that word accountability. And, you know, there are sayings around, you know, if you do want to make yourself accountable, tell someone about it, tell the thing or say the thing out loud, because once it's out into the universe, people have heard you say it, right? You know, new year, new me. I'm going to run every single day. I'm going to eat really healthily. This is the year I start my business. This is the year I propose to my other half. You put those things out into the universe because you're looking for that sense of maybe validation around saying it to someone else and seeing what their response is. So you can go, okay, cool, I've said this to someone, and that means I'm that step closer to bringing it to fruition. I think that from a marriage perspective, and when you are investing time, energy, money, saying those things out loud and asking all of these people to witness it, there absolutely is an element of accountability there that I think years into marriage makes you say, okay, well, if we're experiencing challenges or hard times, we did that thing together. We made that massive commitment to each other. And so what does that still mean to us today? Is it as important as the promises we made to each other on that day? Has our relationship changed since we've done that? And trying to make those adjustments so that you can be that best version of yourself with each other.
I think it's interesting too, if we can meet our physiological needs, our safety needs, our love needs, and our esteem needs from other areas of our life that aren't necessarily romantic relationships or marriage. You know, we've got friends, we've got family, we have the ability to earn money and make, you know, develop resources as an individual human being. We don't necessarily need a romantic partner to do those things. So it kind of asks the question of, well, if you aren't getting those top 2 or 3 kind of tiers of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of that self-actualization, of that growth, of that esteem, then why are you doing it? Why do you need to have a partner?
Yeah. Look, really good question. I guess the thing also in having done your individual internal work before meeting your person and saying, here I am in all my glory. I am the person I want to be today. And I give myself to you, and I give you both the great qualities and the imperfections. And I want to continue to work and grow with you, essentially. I think that when you're saying yes to someone else, you're saying yes to the good, the bad, the ugly, the joyous, the amazing.
The awesome.
Yeah, really. And I think that you can ride that wave of joy and excitement, and, you know, they sometimes call it the honeymoon phase. But, you know, I think people now these days get more serious or make more serious decisions together before they then consider marriage. And so we're having these practice moments of buying houses, buying pets, traveling together, all of the formative times. Whereas, you know, historically, that didn't happen prior to people getting married. They didn't live together. They didn't have children together. And so I think you're having exposure to these different experiences and then being able to use that to apply it to that next milestone.
Yeah, and I think adding to that, like when you're no longer having to deal with the like survival needs, like the bottom of the pyramid kind of thing, when you're not having to deal with that day to day, you can then kind of level up your relationship and go, all right, well, we can now tackle the next issues, which is around love and esteem and all of those higher level issues. And so that probably is why people are starting to tackle some of those things earlier in their relationships, because the survival piece and the physiological piece is already kind of
met.
Pretty stable.
Yeah, those needs are already met. Yeah.
Totally. And I think that with that greater focus on an individual being able to satisfy a lot of those needs themselves, there is that consideration in saying, okay, well, what is it that I'm looking for in a partner? Because even if you've satisfied those individual needs, you know, those more physiological ones, I still think that there is a consideration, saying, okay, well, if I'm the individual being able to achieve that, then I need to pair up with another individual that is also going to be able to be capable of doing that as well. Because you've done the hard internal work, and then you're searching for a partner who is going to meet you on that level and be able to continue that growth with you. And I think that's also, there can be a disconnect there when finding or trying to find, I guess, that person.
Yeah. So Nathan and I love being out in nature and going for walks and stuff. And it's normally like one of our favorite things that we do, particularly while we're traveling. And normally when you're out on a walk of some sort and you're off to a lookout or, going to go hunt down a waterfall, there's normally kind of two options. And it's like, oh, you take the nice, calm, easy, enjoyable walk that is going to have a stroll. Yeah. And it's going to be lovely and you're going to get a pretty reasonable view. Or you take the other option, which might be a little bit longer, a little bit harder to navigate. But normally the reward at the end of it is, this incredible awe-inspiring view or experience to stand under a waterfall. And I think that marriage is a bit like that, where you can choose the easy, happy, pretty good outcome kind of relationship, or you can choose to take the slightly harder, slightly more effort, rockier, might have a few more ups and downs. But if you can reach that place of true fulfillment and that, incredible waterfall at the end, like, it is so worth it. But I think if we don't know what kind of marriage or what kind of relationship we're entering into, if somebody wants to take the nice, easy walk to the lookout versus the waterfall, I think there's that gap in between where we maybe don't know what kind of relationship or marriage we want to enter into. I definitely know that when Nathan and I got married, that wasn't a conversation that we had. No. I think, we've ended up where we both want to go to the waterfall, and that's amazing. Yeah. And we've definitely hit some peaks and troughs, but every time, it's so worth it for us. Whereas I know that there's others who are very content being in a good enough or a lovely lookout place. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think sometimes at the beginning of that journey, we think we're choosing one route, right? There's the easy, there's a little bit more difficult. What high risk, high reward, low risk, low to medium reward, right?
Yeah.
We might choose to go a certain way. And I think probably as a generalization, most people start at the easy point and they say, love should be easy, romance should be easy, I should wake up every day and really enjoy my partner, and it should be easy all the time. And then when those hurdles start to arise, you then take that individual look at yourself and say, okay, how willing am I to tackle these hurdles? How hard is this for me to be able to do? When I was younger, I had some really good advice from a family friend, and she said to me, particularly in times of conflict, whether it was with your parents or with a partner, more often than not, every person is doing this for the first time. They're often having this conflict for the first time, whether it's, battling with like teenage kids or whether it's, the first romantic relationship. And I think that actually acknowledging and saying, well, what if this person is doing this for the first time and all they're using is the experience and the lessons that they've had in their life so far to apply it to this, and their capability right now is here because that's all they've had exposure to. And as they travel through their life and they meet new people and they have different interactions and they have more experiences, they're then better equipped to be able to have those conversations, go on those harder journeys. And I definitely have felt in my own personal life and witnessing friends and family and witnessing some of my couples who most of the time I'm experiencing the most joyous time with them, but wedding planning, family conflict, things that people don't anticipate, it comes up. That's what life is. It is complicated. And it's making that active decision to say, do I wake up every day willing to tackle this challenge? Or do I throw up my hands and say, you know what, this is too hard. This isn't what I signed up for.
I love that you brought this up. So Nathan and I are both late 80s, born both late 80s. We grew up watching Friends. And there's this episode where Monica and Chandler, they've been in this relationship for a little bit and they're still kind of figuring it out. and they have their first real kind of fight, and they're both a bit disorientated by it. And Monica just has the presupposition that they'll, have some conversations and they'll remove the friction and they'll move on. Whereas Chandler, it's the first time he's been in a longer term relationship, he just thought, oh, we've hit our first fight, the relationship's over. So they've got to have this weird conversation around like, well, no, we're in an adult grown-up relationship. We're committed to each other. That doesn't mean that this isn't a problem. And it doesn't, we don't just ignore it. We do have to deal with it. But that realization that like, oh, okay, we are in this, we are sticking through it. And it is the first time that someone maybe has come up against a hurdle like that before.
And they're coming to that, that experience in their own time. And sometimes it's not necessarily aligned with that other person. And Monica having that willingness to straight away go, yeah, great, we're going to work through this together. And quite often, you will see couples who one is more willing to do that first off and the other one needs to take their own time. And I think that when going into a relationship, you have, in theory, a set of values and qualities that you are looking for, and you might see some of them in your partner, and it isn't until you've really spent that time investing that energy and effort into seeing, okay, well, when I scratch under the surface a little bit, I'm seeing, more kind of or different qualities and experiences coming out. And again, it's that willingness to try and understand people's actions, not even necessarily in a romantic relationship setting, in a friendship setting, in a work setting. Why are people doing the things that they do? Why do we behave in the way that we do? And I think that being committed to that understanding means that we get to access this whole array of reward, I guess. Again, it's that high risk, high reward. You're putting yourself out there saying, I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm going to put myself forward to this person and saying, I'm willing to brave this with you. In an unknown kind of format where there might be conflict or hard times. Whereas for some people, that isn't an option to them because they might not have had that experience before, and therefore it seems too scary. And they say, you know what, actually this isn't for me. And that's also fine. That's another lesson in their journey as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a language or something that we've developed as a society where the only measure of success for a relationship is its duration. Whereas I feel like if we can get to a place where it's like, oh, you can have quite a successful and thriving relationship, that ran for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years or 10 years, just because it ended doesn't mean that it wasn't successful or it wasn't thriving and there weren't lessons that you can learn. Because I always think it's interesting when you speak to someone who's been through a divorce and they talk about their failed marriage. It's like, well, was it a failure? Like, if you both decided that it was no longer serving you, isn't that an opportunity, not a failure?
Totally. The recognition that saying something's not working here and we're making an active decision to move on from that. And it might not be together. And I think I love how you said that some people think that relationships are a failure. I have some couples who come to me, they've been together for 6 months and they go, we're getting married. And everyone around them's going, what do you mean you're getting married? You haven't been together for very long. You haven't been through those trials and tribulations together. And then I have some people who have been together for 15 years and they haven't gotten married yet. And they come and they say, we've done all we've needed to do and we're ready to go. We're ready to kind of sign on the dotted line. And I think that for a lot of people who have relationships that are of duration and that they do come to an end, again, there is that maybe that individual feeling of saying, I gave my all to this. And I spent so much time and energy and it was such a crucial part of my life. It's hard not to feel like it's a failure because what happens now? But in any setting, as I mentioned before, in business or in life, when failures or ends to things happen, there's often opportunities and it's just what you decide to do with that.
Mm.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, people do get married at all different stages of life. Like it could be 6 months that they've been together or like you said, 15 years. So is there something common that you notice between those couples that are actually ready to get married or wanting to get married?
I think there is a sense of knowing between them that they found their person. And more often than not, when I'm talking to couples and I'm asking them about their experience together, there is that commonality in saying like, when you know, there is this I think it is a physiological sense of like returning home. You feel so comfortable with this person. Cute. You feel so comfortable with this person that it feels weird to ever feel like you want to be apart from them. And I think that, in our own journeys of having romantic relationships and trying to find that person who we think we're a good match with, we will have elements of that feeling and the relationship might not work out. And then the next time you use those lessons and you apply them and you say, okay, well, I thought I knew with this person, and now I'm with this person, and, I think I know this time as well. But I think there is that level of, it's
certainty.
It is exactly that. And not only certainty in the other person, but certainty in yourself. You know that you're waking up every day and saying, I am the best version of myself with this person. And I know that whatever happens, that they're going to be there, even in the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, you touched on it there. For me, I think it's like, if you think you know, you don't know. If you know, you know.
Totally. It is.
Yeah.
It's that confidence in
Your
that other
decision.
person.
Yeah,
Definitely. And I think really being able to say, like, loudly and proudly, this is my person. This is my person. There's no questions about it. And it is. It's. I think it's quite hard to explain sometimes, particularly when people haven't been with people for very long, but they meet them and they say, yes, this is my match. I was waiting for them.
So you get the opportunity to, peek behind the curtains of people's relationships as you talk about the journey that they've been on to get to you. What are some of the things that you've seen that work really well for couples? Any tips or tricks or ideas?
It differs for every couple that I meet. And, again, I think it comes down to, why have these two people decided to be together? And if you can identify that commonality quite early on, it makes it much easier, particularly as a celebrant, when you are, for quite a short time, getting that peek into a level of intimacy that, you haven't had the joy of knowing these people for 10, 15 years as well, and being through the highs and the lows with them. But I think that, again, it comes down to that certainty in each other and confidence that that person has your back no matter what. I think that there's a level of communication, of a minimum level of communication that has to be present, and a level of openness as well, to say we're exposing ourselves to, I think it is a level of exposure when you get married, especially. You're standing up there and saying, we're doing this thing and we're asking you all to witness it. Like, it's quite overwhelming, right? And, you guys, might have had that experience as well. Even if you do know, when you get to the day, you're saying, this is a big thing we're doing. We're really, I don't think you can ignore that, even when you really know. So it's that level of certainty, openness, communication. And I think also the acknowledgement that being in a couple, you're not the same person. You need to have your own individual life. You're two individuals coming together, and you might have some beautiful synchronicities together, but you've also got some amazing differences that actually end up complementing each other in a weird, strange, and magical way. And more often than not, I think that contributes to the longevity, because you're not living the same life. You're having similar experiences together, but with that different lens and perspective. And so you might have one experience where, for example, you might be on a hike and you might see that waterfall, and Sammy, you might see it and say, that waterfall was so beautiful, and the things I noticed was how it was glistening in the sunlight. And Nathan might see it and go, the thing I noticed was how much water there was, and it was really cascading down. And so we're all having these different perspectives. And I think that down the track, those are the things that kind of come together and contribute to your own memories and building of that relationship together.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. So if there was one tip that you would recommend for people to kind of implement, or one thing that you think that couples should know before getting married, what would that be?
That if you can make it as much about your own joy as possible, then that's what you should focus on. I think there's marriage and then there's the wedding day.
Yeah.
And, they're linked, but they're not the same thing. And sometimes we can forget about the marriage and focus more on the wedding day and the planning and the logistics and all of that thing, aside from, really focusing and saying, what am I really excited about from like an internal perspective? and prioritizing that joy. The tip is prioritize your own joy, not only in marriage, but in life, because there's so many, deflectors that come in and, might threaten that joy sometimes. And I think just being on the same page as your partner and saying, well, what is it that we want from this life together? What is it that we're looking for? Let's prioritize that joy, because we can wake up every day, go to work, make money, burn out, go on holiday, come back, do it all again. Or we can actively say, how are we going to live this life together in a way that's meaningful?
Hey, so you joined us on a podcast about relationships. What's your own relationship status?
I have a beautiful, beautiful partner called Alessandro. We've been together for 4.5 years, madly in love, and, married, kids, the whole thing has always been on the cards for us. And I think that it was, a pretty classic case of when you know, and we knew pretty early on. So that was really nice. We lived together in Neutral Bay, love spending time together, but we also love our own kind of individual things as well. And I think that has also been a pretty crucial part of that continued love together.
And from your own relationship, is there a daily practice or a frequent practice that the two of you have that help you keep your relationship fueled up?
I think really leaning into prioritizing joy and understanding what the other one really needs from the relationship, whether it's, identifying what your key love languages are. For us, it's very much quality time and carving out time to do that, because, again, you can get so wrapped up in your own lives and we're all busy and important. But, when you really get down to it and say, well, actually, why are we doing all of this? So I think it's that prioritizing joy. The only other thing that I would say, and this is a practice of my own, and I'm trying to get Alessandro more on board, but we're different personalities. Whenever we're having like a conflict or a fight, I will almost immediately always say, I'm really sorry that we're having this fight right now. And I always find that coming to the table a little bit and apologizing early on, so that you can then facilitate more of a constructive conversation, because I think we can all lean into being defensive or anger or anything like that. But that really simple action of saying, I'm really sorry that this is happening to us right now, just makes you reconnect and say, God, I'm really sorry too, because I love this person. This isn't the way we want to spend our life.
Yeah, I really like that, because conflict it throws us straight into feeling, threatened, and I've got to protect myself. So if I like that little tip of bringing some care to the conflict, even while you're in it.
Yeah, and I loved as well that you said that it's about us, like that. I'm really sorry this is happening to us at the moment, not to myself or not.
Yeah, well, because we can always feel, that I feel really hurt right now, or you did this to me, and you lean into that blame game. And, not saying that we don't sometimes do that, but I think trying to reconnect and saying, well, we're having this conflict together, and in the end, it's going to affect that continuation of the relationship that we have. So let's commit to doing it together in the same way that we commit to doing other things in our life together that bring us joy. Right now, this isn't bringing us joy, but let's try and move back to that kind of centerfold.
Hey, I really like that. Thank you for sharing it. Hey, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. As you might know, a couple of our core values at Fuel Collective is to date forever, to love life and be the change. And part of being the change is taking accountability for what we have influence over, but also the change that we want to see in the world. So to say thank you, we've provided a student in Indonesia with a week of classroom education in Borneo. So it helps improve the female literacy rate, which then has a huge ripple effect for their community. So we do that by our partnership with Buy One, Give One, but the organisation and project is run by Friends of National Parks. So thank you so much for helping us make that happen.
No, thank you. I think that there's really something to say in starting a project like this and really having a greater purpose behind it. And I think that also allows us to really, again, commit to having more meaningful conversations. So no, thank you. I'm glad that has facilitated, an amazing opportunity for someone else.
So Claudia, if people want to connect with you or want to learn a little bit more about you or potentially have you as a celebrant, how should they
Anytime.
do that?
Look, I am found on all the best social media channels. So my business is called The Love Diaries, and you can find me at The Love Diaries with 2 underscores on Instagram or just on Facebook, the Love Diaries, and you'll see my big
beautiful
blonde face. Lots of smiles, lots of hearts. And I'd love to connect with anyone who's thinking about getting married or is engaged, wants a little bit of advice. I'm more than happy to help and start a conversation.
That's really generous. Thank you so much.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.